Good evening, everyone. We're letting everyone in the room. And then we will get started. Leah, can you see the screen?
I can, thank you. Let me know when you're ready.
We have actually a good number. We can go ahead and get started.
I just have a quick question before we start. Would the slides be mailed to participants?
They will be emailed at the end of the class.
Great, thank you.
Let me do that.
All right, good evening, everybody. And welcome to Community Development 1004.003. This is a part of our community development series for MPU University, which is sponsored by the Department of City Planning at the City of Atlanta. My name is Leah LaRue, and I am in the Office of the Commissioner in the Department of City Planning. I'm very excited to be joined tonight by my coworkers and colleagues around the corner. So I'll introduce our departmental folks first, and then we'll pass over the baton shortly to the folks from around the corner. Samantha Terry is our program manager for education and training.
Hey, everyone.
And Tony McNeil is our program manager for engagement and outreach. I'm sorry.
Good evening, y'all.
I think that's all that's here from our team. So we'll go ahead and get into our preliminaries real quickly, and then we'll get started. So first, to go over our classroom rules. Sorry for the folks that come often, you probably know these by heart, but we always have at least a few people who are joining for the very first time. So I want to make sure that everyone knows the ground rules so that we have a really good and productive class tonight. First of all, please do keep your microphones muted at all times, except when you've been acknowledged to ask a question. We'll get through that. We'll get to that in a second, but otherwise, please do make sure that you keep your microphones muted at all times. That helps us cut down on background noise, feedback, etc. Also, please keep your cameras on to receive course credit. This is a requirement for those that are enrolled in the Citizen Planner Certificate program. If you're taking this class to qualify for Citizen Planner Certificate credits, then you need to have your camera on so that you can actively participate in the class. If you're not in the Citizen Participant Planner Certificate program, you don't have to, did I say that right? Citizen Planner Certificate program, sorry. You don't have to keep the camera on, but we would like for you to, because we like seeing your faces and knowing that you're getting everything that is being covered tonight. If you have a question to ask, please raise your hand to get in the queue. Please don't just unmute yourself and start asking. Raise your hand to get in the queue, and I'll show you how to do that momentarily if you don't know. And last but not least, our golden rule: all questions must be relevant to course content. And I want to add something that I learned from a good friend of mine over at the Center for Civic Innovation. My friend Rohit said that questions end in a question mark. So please make sure that you're not using the opportunity to make commentary, especially not political commentary. I assure you, having done these classes for 3 years now, if you have questions that are not appropriate for this setting, if you email either us or the instructors, you will get an answer to your question, period, point blank. If you have questions that are not really relevant for this setting or not appropriate for this setting, don't worry about it. You can email us. We will certainly give you all of our contact information. The folks that are instructing tonight, as well as my team, we will drop all of our contact info in the chat. So if you have questions that you don't get a chance to ask tonight, or you can tell it's not really the setting for that, no worries at all. We'll make sure that you get your questions answered. But here in this room, your questions have to be relevant to course content. All right. Second to last thing is to raise your hand. You'll click on, if you have, I think, the most recent version of Zoom, you'll click on the reactions button, which should be at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a computer, you'll see the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a phone, you might have to play around a little bit because sometimes it changes. But you'll click on where it says reactions. You'll get a pop-up box. And then at the bottom of that pop-up box, you'll see where it says raise hand. If you click on that, that is how you raise your hand. If you haven't done it in a while or you haven't done it ever, you can feel free to go ahead and try it now, and we'll lower your hand for you, or you can practice even more and lower it yourself. But that is how you raise your hand. The last thing that I'll say is that if you do not have a pen, pencil, piece of paper, something to take notes with, this is a really good time to run and get it, because in the next few minutes, the instruction is going to begin. If you forgot to grab a notebook, or you don't take notes on your computer, you'd rather have something, it's a good time to go and grab something. That way, if you have questions, you can jot them down and remember what they are when it's time to cover Q&A. The last thing that I'll tell you is a little bit about NPU University. We started NPU University in 2020. We established it in 2019. We had our first class in 2020 for the purpose of promoting equity. We wanted to make sure that everyone in Atlanta had access to the same information, the same tools, the same knowledge, and the same resources. So since then, we have been really, really well received by Atlantans. We're grateful that so many of you show up every time we produce one of these classes. We have about 40 classes that we produce every year. They are, as you probably know by now, free to all Atlanta residents and business owners, and free to all City of Atlanta employees. I do want to point out that over the last couple of classes that we've done, or last few classes, we've had an increasing number of city employees. So if you are a city employee, if you're a public servant in any capacity and you're in the room, thank you for what you do, and shout out to you. Thank you for being here. At this point, you have heard enough of me. So now we're going to get into the meat of why we're here. Angeline, you have your hand raised. Is it for a question, or were you practicing?
I have a quick question. You mentioned course credit. If we're not signed up for that, for the citizen, forgot the name of it, but if we're not signed up for that yet, would this still count towards that if we end up signing up for that later?
I believe it will, but I'm going to drop Samantha's information in the chat, and you can reach out to her to have that discussion, okay?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, you're welcome. And I do encourage all of you, if you're not already enrolled in our Citizen Planner Certificate program, to reach out to Samantha and get some information about that. All right, without further ado, are we calling on Vicky or Michelle? Michelle, all right, awesome. My friend and my colleague from Invest Atlanta, she leads community engagement at Invest Atlanta, and she will take the instruction from here. She'll introduce you to those that will be covering this class tonight. In this class, you should expect to learn a lot about the public financing tools that Invest Atlanta uses, including the TADS, tax allocation districts, you might see me, if they use an acronym, they're usually really good about it. But if they slip up, because this is our language that we speak day to day, so if someone slips up and uses an acronym and you don't know what it means, no worries, I'll drop it in the chat just as quickly as they're talking about it so that you'll have that cheat sheet. All right, Michelle Lewis, the floor is yours. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah. Hello, everyone. I'm going to apologize in advance. I have a puppy, and I'm really hoping that he lets me get through my portion of the presentation. If he doesn't, please be patient. He's really cute, if that should help at all. But we're going to hope that he gets through this without any issues. I am joined by some of the best team members. Vicki Roberts will be on to help us with this presentation, as will Ashley Rivera, and they will introduce themselves just before they start. I am going to talk about Invest Atlanta for just a minute. So you may be familiar with Invest Atlanta. If not, we are the Economic Development Authority for the City of Atlanta. We have partnerships and some great community partners that we work very closely with, and then some of them are actually subsidiaries of Invest Atlanta, starting with Atlanta Beltline, Inc. Atlanta Urban Redevelopment Agency is also a subsidiary, as well as Downtown Development Authority. Atlanta Emerging Markets, Inc., also known as AMI. Urban Residential Finance Authority, also known as URFA. And then Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative, also known as WE. So those are those acronyms that we love to use. Hopefully this will come in handy to learn them this way as opposed to the other way around. Our mission is to advance Atlanta's global competitiveness by growing a strong economy, building vibrant communities, increasing economic prosperity and equity for Atlantans. So there are a lot of things that we do that align with what Leah and her team does at the Office for City Planning. All right, let me get to the next one. So we're broken up into two big divisions, okay? So we certainly have our supporters, legal, finance, marketing, operations. They all support us, but we break down into economic development and community development. You're gonna hear from community development tonight. But the group breaks down into sort of subgroups, if you will, tax allocation districts, housing initiatives, commercial corridor development, neighborhood revitalization. Those are the things that we work on in our smaller groups that make up community development. And we work hand in hand with economic development as well. And they handle the business attraction, bringing those companies into the city of Atlanta, business retention and expansion, small business finance, creative industries, and tech innovation and entrepreneurship. So while we're handling things, making sure that there's opportunities for Atlantans in terms of housing, neighborhood revitalization, and the things that they see on a daily basis, that where they live, we've got economic development, making sure that there are jobs in the city for everyone. And that includes those that are creatives, as well as those who are small business owners. I'm gonna turn this over now before my dog barks. And Vicki has been with us for a really long time. She is a subject matter expert, a servant leader. I'm really happy to call her a team member. And she can tell you this with just listen off the top of her head. But she's gonna introduce you to some of the financing that is available for multifamily housing.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I took a sneak peek, so I know some of you may know me and some of you may not. I am Vicki Roberts. I am the Director of Multifamily Housing Bonds. And to Michelle, thank you very much. And Samantha and Leah, good to see you both. Love you. Just wanted to say that, you know, we've been doing this, as Michelle stated, a long time. Michelle, I don't know who's driving. Is that you, Samantha? Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. And so just kind of want to talk about a few of our programs that we offer here at Invest Atlanta. Some of them may be, if you go to our website, some of them may be closed right now or on hold just because we're a little oversubscribed. So just be patient with us as we try to get some other financing incentives. So first of all, I want to talk about tax exempt bonds. Tax exempt bonds is really a large mechanism for larger multifamily housing deals that want to apply for what we call 4% low income housing tax credits, or LIHTC. That's that acronym Leah was speaking about. But just kind of want to mention, this is, we receive allocation annually, and the tax credits come from the state, and so does the allocation. And so our allocation that we received this year, I know this number says 95 million on the slide, but it actually was about 105 million. And so the state decided this year to make it a competitive round. So we were oversubscribed with the applications. We received about 13 inducements. And so we're able now, they did the award for 2023. And so we were awarded 9 projects. So I'm so excited that we're going to have 9 developments coming into the city of Atlanta for affordable housing, because we know, everybody knows, because you're on this, that we need it. So we're very excited about that. But this is a below market interest rates, and it's up to 100% financing leverage, as I stated, with the 4% credits. We do have a minimum affordability period of 15 years. But that could go the longer of those bonds that are outstanding, or if you have a HAP contract, or if you do income averaging. Some developers choose to do income averaging, which allows a developer to get that 80% AMI, and then also to get the 40 to down to get deeper levels of affordability, which we love to see, of course. So you could do like 80, 60, and 40, as long as your units average out to that 60% AMI level. And so, and that's what we use, and on that portion. And then we also have the housing opportunity bonds, and we had two funding sources for multifamily on that one. One was a large multifamily, and one was the small multifamily. The large multifamily, again, we've been kind of going through that pretty rapidly with all the taxes and bond deals. As you know, in the world that we're in right now, that interest rates have gone up, construction costs have gone up, and there's lots of gaps in our incentives that we have. So this is an actual gap financing tool, and it could be a second mortgage. We've been in positions of third or fourth position. So and it's used to finance acquisition and new construction or rehab. Right now, the way it looks, it's we looking at greater than 70 units. There may be a chance later on that we move that up to greater than 85 units. And so it's a low interest rate loan that can be in between 1 to 5%. If you're a nonprofit, the rate could be 1 to 3%. And the max amount that you could get is 1.5 million, unless you're doing more units, over 200 units, and you possibly could get up to 2 million if those funds are available. Right now, we do not have them. I'm not going to spend a lot more time, because you're like, why are you talking about it if it's not there? But you know, we may have opportunities for some more coming up. And then we have the housing opportunity bond for small multifamily. Right now, that's anything that's less than 70 units, 70 units or less. And so that again is low interest rates for profit developers and for nonprofit developers. Again, those interest rates are between 1 to 5%. The maximum amount at this moment is 700,000. And the minimum affordability period is at least 15 years. We ask that you set aside 30% of those units as 80% AMI. And but if you want to do more, as long as we have 15% unrestricted, we're ready to talk. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're deciding what development you want to do. And then we have also, there's some set aside that was for nonprofit set aside, and that was specifically focused for nonprofit developers. And again, that amounts up to 1.5 million. And I had to share the wealth with this one. So we did have some single family developers that came in, and they also, this fund can be used for single family development and multifamily development. And so we also have that funding source. All right, Michelle. Yes. Okay, so the Beltline TAD increment. What this fund is, around the Beltline TAD, you know, as it's starting to develop and businesses and, you know, complexes are coming up, that's bringing more increment or more tax into the city, into that jurisdiction. And so what we did was to continue to do affordable housing around the Beltline, because we know everything's increasing, we're able to get 75% of the excess tax increment that comes into the Beltline TAD. So there's all these crazy numbers is done with MuniCap, but they have what they call excess increment. And out of that, we get 75% of that to continue to do gap financing for affordable housing along the Beltline. You have to be within the Beltline. I know a lot of times you see stuff around the Beltline overlay, but this is around you have to be in the Beltline. And so you have to create at least 20 units, and then you could get up to $1 to $2 million depending on the capital stack. And then if you have some commercial space and you want to rent that out at a low value, you also can get that, and that could be up to $3 million would be for the whole development. It has to be majority housing, not commercial. So just you have to have at least 5,000 square feet of commercial space. And the minimum year on the affordability is 15 years for that. And all of our rents are based on the HUD published rents. And we'll have new incomes and rents coming out probably around May. I think that's when we were notified that those will be coming out shortly. I'm not seeing comments, so I don't know if we're doing comments now or later, but I'm gonna continue on and then y'all could just let me know.
Hey, Vicki,
Mhm.
it's Ashley. I was dropping a little info on what AMI is and a link to our
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
AMI
see that.
charts, but when I send it, it goes to Tony, and then Tony posts it for everyone to see. So just so
Okay.
you know, those are coming from me. And once you're done, kind of fact check what I put and add to it.
Okay,
so
yeah.
that might be helpful, but
Yeah.
it's technically being posted by Tony.
Okay, thank you for that, Ashley.
I'll fix
But
that.
you
for you.
know, one thing maybe we need to add, Leah and team, is maybe we put the income limits in here on a slide and can kind of talk about it, maybe going on next time. It's kind of food for thought, just so they'll get an idea, general idea of what those income limits and rents are. Okay. But thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that. So Byron City Housing Trust Fund, this is definitely geographically restricted. This fund was created back in 1989. That was when the dome was first being built. They wanted investment to go back into the Vine City community, Vine City English Avenue community. And so when we first did this, now I wasn't here, but when it was first done, no, I'm old, but I'm not that old. But when it was first created, they went and did some single family development. They also did some apartment complexes over there. I don't know what the new name is, but it used to be Courtyard at Maple. It sits on the corner of Northside Drive and ML King. That was one of the developments that was built during that time. And there was a lot of single family development. So we have just a little bit of money in that account. It's not a whole lot, but we still try to use that for that area when we can fill a gap if we're able to do that. And again, that amount, that 1 to 3 million, unfortunately, that's not accurate anymore because we do not have that much money. This must have been an older slide. And then our lease purchase bond is really attractive for developers that are on more of a market rate level. And it helps us to kind of get some affordable units into developments that normally wouldn't do affordable units. This is a tax incentive that allows a developer to come in and get a tax incentive to reduce their taxes 50% the first year, increasing 5% every year until year 11, they're paying full taxes. We just require that they have at least 10% of those units at 60% AMI or 15 at 80% AMI and area median income. And then the tenants, and then also year 11. And so the affordability period is only for that 10 years. Year 11, you know, it'll unwind, and it's what we call a bond for title. And Invest Atlanta holds the title, and then but has no obligations. And then and then at the year 11, it's unwound and goes back to the developer. So I know there may be some questions. So I guess, Leah, are we answering later after Ashley presents?
That's up to you. If you'd like to take questions now, you can.
Okay, it says once a developer receives and public financing is fitted with affordable requirement, then they must make sure, oh, that's you. That's never mind. That's Ashley. That's Ashley's comment. All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna turn it over to Ashley. Thank you all. And I'm here. Oh, I see some hands. So
Yeah, if you want to take questions on your section, you've got two right now. You have a question from Pam Storm and then Mr. Terry Ross.
Whatever works best for the team, I'm for it. If I can't answer it, I'll shoot you an email. Okay, Ms. Storm, you who I see first.
Oh, hey, great. Thanks, Vicky. Met you before. You're amazing. My question is for small multifamily, like less than 15 units or so. Would any of these programs apply? Maybe if they're in the geographic boundaries, maybe the Vine City Trust Fund?
It's possibly we could do something in Vine City. Like I stated before, we really have limited funds in there. So it's not like a lot of gap financing that we could do in that space. We don't do like one house or two houses. We have to have it, I think in there, it's like at least 5 houses to be considered, or 5 units to be considered multifamily. And so we want to make sure that it's at least 5 units on that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I think it was Mr. Ross.
Yes. My question pertains to the actual financing or funding itself. It seems that what you're financing is that me?
No,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
I fixed it. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Ross.
it seems that what you're financing is in direct contradiction to the promise of mixed income communities. And more or less, this would be concentrating the lower income communities.
No, it's not. We asked that at least 15% of these units be unrestricted. And the only exception to that rule is if it is, if the developer is using income averaging, right? Or if it is a senior housing development, or if it has already has a HAP contract on it, which is a housing assisted payment program contract with HUD. And now today, our policy just changed to if it is 100% support, permanent supportive housing. Those are the only exceptions to the rule. We do want the mixed incomes. So that is what our policy is at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I could add to that, you know, the range of the AMI levels and requiring a mix is also mixing the incomes, but also, you know, the AMI levels, 80% AMI or 60% AMI are not considered income levels in poverty. You know, getting down to the lower levels absolutely does, you know, that's why Vicki mentioned we're excited to get to the lower levels, 30% AMI, because it's very difficult, especially in the current construction environment, to produce housing affordable to people with very low incomes. But yeah, if you look at, you know, the 80% AMI for a household of 4, you know, that's people making $77,000 a year.
Sure.
So just kind of, it's like kind of workforce housing. And as you go farther down that spectrum, you're getting into the lower incomes.
Right. And I'm just wondering how this is going to result in, say, 30% AMI to the north side versus 80%, a concentrate of 80% AMI on the north side, which I know they need. Affordable housing is needed throughout the city, but
I mean, if developers come to us, and we want all developers, we've had some come to us on the north side. I know a lot of times it looks like everything is concentrated on the south side. But that's not the case. It is a little harder to do stuff on the north side of Atlanta, only because of the land costs. Sometimes it's a little bit more, expensive. And there's just not enough. These interest, I mean, I know you guys are following. Interest rates are crazy. Construction costs are crazy, and so in order to do affordable housing, they need this gap financing. So all of our tools that Ashley's going to speak about, that I just spoke about, except for taxes and bond, is gap financing, right? So they have to come up with some other equity, or another a permanent construction lender. So they have to come up with other financing tools. We're just trying to help it out because y'all been on MP. I know I see a lot of you on there. Mr. Ross, you've been on here a long time too. So I remember seeing you. And so all I'm saying is we know that there's a need for affordable housing, right? How can we help? How can we do this? And we're doing the best we can with the tools and incentives that we have here at Invest in Atlanta. And we're not promoting concentration of poverty, as Ashley kind of spoke to. So. All right. Okay. I guess Mr. Martin. I think a lot of people snuck in, Leah. I don't know.
I'm sorry. Yes,
I think it's Mr. Martin was next. Yeah. I'm just looking at people. I'm going down. I see their hands.
No. Actually, oh yeah, Mr. Martin is next, and then Jennifer Brooks.
Yep.
Okay. It's sort of a two-part question. So with some of these things, I understand where the money that is going to the developers is coming from originally, as in property tax money. But with some of the ones on the prior slide, it wasn't clear what the source of the funds actually was.
Are you okay, Michelle? Can you go back? So, and I wish I could share my screen to show you. So taxes and bonds, that is a federal program, right? So each state is given what they call bond volume cap allocation. Every state gets that in the United States of America. And then what they do is they take that money and they split it up. And they say this portion is for economic development, this portion is for housing.
So those are federal dollars then?
Yeah, well, yes, they come from the government, yes, the federal government, but it's monitored and maintained by the state, which is our Department of Community Affairs.
Whereas on the next slide, it was City of Atlanta tax dollars.
Yes, and the next slide was the 2021 Housing Opportunity Bond Initiative. And so that's what those funds were for. And right now it was a $100 million bond issue initially. That was the final. It was first 50 million, and then it would go up to the 100 million.
Okay, and so in each of these cases, what that money is actually buying is a fixed discount in rent for a fixed number of units over a fixed period of time, which has an easily calculatable value. Are we doing a cost-benefit analysis to see if we are getting more than, or at least as much as we are paying for that value?
Yes, we do. We have a very extensive underwriting tool. And so we do all the underwriting. We don't just give you money because you say, oh, I got a gap. We're going to underwrite it to ensure that you have a gap. So
I'm sorry, that wasn't the nature of the question. Sorry, let me rephrase.
I understand your question, Mr. Martin. Your question is, are we getting the best bang for our buck? And yes, we are, because we underwrite the deals to ensure. We know construction costs. We're paying in. When I look at deals across the way, construction costs right now is almost $200,000 to $300,000 a unit, right? So our little portion is not making up a lot of that. It's just a little bit that's going in, because we're only putting in like 1.5 million or 700,000. So it's not like, we're putting in $15 million, in a deal. And so they need us to get across that line.
No, I'm sorry. I don't think you do understand my question.
Okay, well, maybe I don't.
If we use the TAD analogy, or the TAD case specifically, right? So the developer is getting what turns out to be a 25% tax discount over 10 years, which amounts to about 4% of the average assessment, which or average appraisal, which probably has something like to do with the project cost. And so we know what that public cost is, right? I mean, that you can predict, and you do, in fact, in your documents, predict exactly how many public dollars are going to be given to that developer. And what we're getting in return is a fixed discount on rents relative to market over a fixed period of time, which again, you can calculate how many dollars in rental discount that is. And so the cost benefit analysis is nothing more than the ratio of those two numbers, isn't it?
It would be, yeah, I think I see where you're going, Jim.
Yeah.
You know, I think so at the time that the deal is authorized and then constructed, you know, like over the course of the, say, 15-year affordability period, the rents, you know, we don't forecast the projected increase in the rents or anything like this, but we're all able to see, you know, the discount over the market rate rents, because we do have market rate rents in all of the projects. So oddly enough, like, so you have a good point. We could really talk about this, and I would, you know, maybe we could talk about it. The AMI level rents that we have is based on the metro-wide median income, which sometimes means that the max rent that can be charged at like 80% AMI is actually more than the market bears in that neighborhood. And we're securing that level over a long period of time, oftentimes in neighborhoods that are changing really fast and having displacement and losing other rental opportunities to redevelopment that aren't restricted, you know, we don't have any control over. And so then we're also getting the capital investment into the property to do the development of both the market rates and the, you know, the affordable units. And of course, increasing the tax base on that property over time. So we are able to look at the projected increase of the property value and the taxes that that'll generate, because we are able to estimate that, you know, based on the construction cost, and track that, you know, once they go live. So, you know, kind of doing that analysis is not, it's not. Each development is a little bit different in where that discount is getting you in the markets. And then of course it changes over time.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Jennifer?
Mine is a simple one. Are all of these funding streams available only for rentals, or is it also for home ownership of condos or single family?
So the ones that I'm speaking about are multifamily, but we do have some set aside out of the Housing Opportunity Bond Fund that can be used for single family development. And it is, we could do it for rental or for sale. And also in the Vine City, but they have to be at least, I think it's like, if it's a nonprofit, maybe three units. If it's a for-profit, I think it has to be 5 units. And we'll have our single family person on next time, you know, just to kind of elaborate a little bit more on the single family development. But we definitely want to see rooftops too. So we're not trying not to have some single family development. And so we definitely encourage that with all of our funding sources.
Thank
you. The only one that doesn't work is the tax exempt bond. I'm sorry, Leah.
Oh, no, you're fine. Thanks, Vicki. All right, Tanya Williams and then John Jones.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my question was on the multifamily, if a developer comes to Invest Atlanta and is proposing a project that does not fit the community, like for instance, micro housing, that would not really promote like family affordability and also kind of would become a glorified rooming house. How does that work? Because if it's not something that the community is receptive to or needs, because some communities have a lot of boarding houses already, how does Invest Atlanta address that? Do they still get the money because they own the property, even if the community is not for that and would like them to rework that model. And the other thing was, when you said the estimated construction costs run around 200 to 300K per unit. For instance, these micro units are like 184 square feet and 224 square feet being the largest. So, you know, I'm just curious, like when something like that comes, you know, do you deny it, or if the community doesn't want it, does it get denied, or do they still get the funding?
Okay, so there's two questions to there. Once I'll talk about our development. We ask developers that are asking for incentive from Invest Atlanta, they have to go through the community engagement process. And so we ask that they present their transaction to the community. So the community is aware of what the developer intends to put up on the site, and all of in that we ask that the community send us an a recommendation letter. And that's what we require, that they get a recommendation letter. It could be one, it could also be a denial letter. It can be a recommendation with conditions. And we ask for that. We look at the reasons why they're denying it. And then we make a decision, and our board or our housing committee, they ultimately make the final decision whether this gets approved or not. That's the first thing about the community engagement and that. The second question was around boarding houses. We do not fund boarding houses. That's not something that we fund. So I just want to be clear on that.
And may I add to that? When you said rooming houses, it wasn't, the proposal was saying micro units, but because they're not leased and it's really very transitional, it's really a large boarding house, meaning a multifamily boarding house. And I'm just, and maybe you don't have the answer to that tonight, but I'm just, you know, I'm just saying that that has come across and has been presented, and was just wondering how that, when it reaches your level, if and when it does reach your level, how you guys would address that.
So there are times that developers come in and do micro units. It depends on, I'm not sure, you may be specifically talking about a specific project. So I can't really answer that, but if it's a micro unit and it has, you know, the kitchen, the bathroom and things like that, there are times that we may do that development. So I'm not sure if you want to get my contact information, Leah, I think we'll put it in there. You can reach out to me and we could talk, you know, this through and to kind of get a better understanding of what you're requesting. We look at each development individually. Again, we do permanent supportive. We do permanent supportive housing. And so sometimes those units may be a little smaller. They may not be, you know, 600 or 700, but you'd be surprised as many developments. And I have this conversation all the time, that developers come to us and the units are smaller, and they're saying that's what the people want. And so I'm like, okay, let's talk about it, right? So let's look at it. And so we have to look at each project individually.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
I can add on to that. Specific, and we're kind of, you know, this is probably killing some birds with one stone, you know, like eliminating the questions that might come up after TAD. Like these are applicable in the TAD. When we have a developer come to us who's, you know, we ask like their unit mix and the proposed rent mix as well. We do look to see that there have a diversity of unit types, in addition to, right, those required different affordability levels. Because while, you know, in some parts of the city, there's lots of singles and, like, you know, maybe couples or people, you know, small households that do demand smaller units. But if we're incentivizing it and it's going to be restricted to affordable, we need to make sure that it's improving, just like Michelle said, opportunity to those affordable units for all Atlantans, and that's every household type as well as income level. So when we get somebody who's let's just say that, like, it's an old hotel and they're going to refurbish it, it's closed, it's not operating, they're like, it's really easy just to make all of those micro units or small studios. You know, we talk about not wanting to fund like a 100% studio development. We ask them to please, you know, let us know what other units they could work into that and what the various options are. And so we do often get changes to, sometimes small, but significant changes to the unit mix because of that approach. And of course, an even amount of every unit type has to be affordable, right? So like it's split evenly across all the types. So you can't just make all your studios affordable and then charge market rate on your 2 bedrooms, for example.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, Mr. Jones and then Mr. Ross, and then we're going to move into TADS. And this is just a reminder, the first of many that I'll make tonight. So please make sure that your questions are questions and are relevant to course content, please, meaning relevant to the section that we just covered. Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones. All right, Mr. Ross.
Yeah, piggybacking on the woman Tonya before me, when a developer purchases a property using incentive dollars and they come before the MPU, an agreement is forged for certain protocols that we're looking out for our residents. When those services start falling off over the years, what kind of recourse does the community have?
Mr. Ross, I don't know that that's really relevant to course content, so I'm going to hold that question, and if we have time at the end, we'll cover that. And if not, I'll ask for Vicki or Ashley or someone to get us a response to that. I'm sorry, Mr. Ross. I love that question. I really do. I promise you, but I worry that it's going to open up a can of worms that's not really going to allow us to get to the content here.
All right. Well, just as long as I can get an answer, that'd be great. Thank you.
Send it to me in the chat and I'll get you an answer.
I was gonna say I could give it to him short and sweet. If it's a community benefits, we have no control over that.
No, it's no, it was an MPU approval with conditions.
Yeah,
that's not the question, Vicki, but let's get to, I want to hear the answer to that myself, but I also want to cover this stuff, so.
okay.
All right, thanks. So I'm Ashley Rivera. I'm the Assistant Director for Neighborhood Revitalization in the Community Development Group at Invest Atlanta. And so that means I'm responsible for projects and our investments in a number of our TADs primarily, along with the other Assistant Director of Westside Initiatives who focuses on the Westside TADs, Samira Ajani. But of course, it's always all hands on deck for our different programs. So I work with Vicki on projects with our housing opportunity bonds and different, oftentimes we're layering some of our incentives, a TAD incentive along with, they're also pursuing tax exempt bonds. So we're always working together to vet these projects and get the projects done. And so, I think if many of you attended our NPU University for Invest Atlanta 101, a lot of this content is the same. So like the general overview of what is a TAD and how TADs function, I'm going to go fairly quickly. But if you didn't attend that last one, don't worry. If you have questions, please bring it up at the end and I can go deeper. I just want to acknowledge that many of you may have already heard some of it. But at the end, I'll get deeper into the programs that we organize in the TADs, so because that's the meat and potatoes of the public financing, how we turn the TAD tool into public financing opportunities. So next slide, Michelle. So the City of Atlanta has 10 TADs, and TAD's a great, lovely acronym, one of our many, for tax allocation districts. In other states, it's called tax increment financing, but Georgia calls it tax allocation district. And so those, our first one was established in '92, and the last ones were established in 2006. We have 10. Yep, and those are enabled by state law. So first, the state passed a law called the Redevelopment Powers Act, enabling cities to pursue tax allocation districts within their geography if they so chose, and it sets the parameters for them. It's for catalyzing investment in areas that are disinvested or experiencing blight. And then it talks about it's established as a funding source to do that redevelopment by directing an increment, some of the property taxes from those districts into a fund, and all taxing entities can participate but must opt in. That's the City of Atlanta, Fulton County, and the Atlantic Public Schools. So when they're formed, that election is made, and so the taxing entities decide if they're participating in the TAD. And then, of course, the city has designated Invest Atlanta as its redevelopment agent, so that's why we're responsible for managing financial management of the TADs and administering them and setting the programs, turn that into financing tools for developers. All right, next slide. So the redevelopment powers law is important to note because it does govern, what you can and can't do with a TAD and how they are to be established. So we can only do what they enable us to do, and it really defines the type of use that you can use your TAD dollars for. We really focus on like the sticks and bricks is TAD's bread and butter. If developer typically already has the land, it's putting together their project. When they bring it to us, they have all their other financing, and we are doing an underwriting process like Vicki said, but we really are telling them like your award is to cover capital costs, the construction of the building, improvements to the site, very physical redevelopment of that land. There's some financing and professional services if you need rezoning, if you're doing some soft costs like that, those are eligible. But we really have to hew closely to the letter of the law in administering the TAD and using those funds for redevelopment. So next slide. And so this is an image that kind of helps illustrate how TADs function and how they generate what portion of the tax base in a TAD is used for these incentives, and what portion of the tax base in each TAD goes to each of the taxing entities, goes to the city, goes to Atlanta Public Schools, and goes to Fulton County. So on the left where it says the arrow with assessed value, so when a TAD is being formed, the tax base, the tax digest, the value of all the properties in the TAD is established with the property tax assessor, and that's the tax base. And so that amount of revenue from the property taxes in that district will continue to go to each of the taxing jurisdictions for the life of the TAD. And then as redevelopment activities occur and the property tax base increases over time, that's the dark blue, kind of as that little graph, that line graph goes up, jaggedy edges, sometimes more jaggedy than others, depending on the economic fluctuations in our housing market and our commercial real estate market. As those values increase, that increase increment is what goes to the TAD and funds the incentives that we have. And so at the end of the TAD then, once the TAD is closed, typically targeted about 25 years, but it can vary. And the TAD is ended, all costs are paid, all obligations are satisfied, and the redevelopment goals are achieved. Then all of the tax revenue goes back to those jurisdictions. And the goal is, of course, that has increased over time, hopefully significantly, so that there's a larger tax base for the functioning of the public entities. So I'll go next slide, Michelle. So we have the 10 TADs. These are them distributed around the city. So the West Side TAD, second on the left, was our first one in '92, and then the last TADs established in 2006 were like Hollowell, Campbellton, the Stadium TAD, and Metropolitan Parkway. So we have some relatively small TADs that generate small amounts of increment. And then we have some TADs that are in our central business district, like the West Side and the East Side TAD, that really have, a lot of things going on, but have generate a fair amount of tax increment over time. And then we have two that were specific purpose, really designed for a specific purpose, the Atlantic Station and Princeton Lake TADs. So the bonds were issued for complete development of those areas. Atlantic Station, of course, the redevelopment of the Atlantic Steel site, and Princeton Lakes was a complete development of single family housing largely, and other infrastructure there in Southwest Atlanta. And so those two are closed in the sense that they're no longer funding projects. The bonds funded the entire goal of those TADs. And so now they'll remain open just until the bonds are paid off. The other TADs are all still accepting, still making funding allocations. Next slide. So I'll get into the nuances of the different funds, programs that we've established that guide developers into what they can apply for and how they can use these TAD funds in redevelopment. In 3 of our TADs, well, in the West Side and East Side TAD, we have the Ascension Fund, as well as the Resurgence Fund. And then also in Perry Bolton TAD, developers are able to apply for the Resurgence Fund. And these are based on the capacity of those TADs to generate, a large increment and enough to fund a number of projects at these levels. The Ascension Fund targets large-scale catalytic real estate projects, and the TAD can fund up to 10% of development costs as long as they're all eligible costs. And there's a minimum project cost of $7.5 million. Lots of times we're talking about affordable housing. So if they're producing at least 20 units for an affordability period of 5 years, this would be rental, or at least 3 units for sale. If you're a nonprofit, 5 if you're for profit. But we also fund commercial projects, not just housing. A large part of what the TAD focuses on is commercial redevelopment. And so if you have a commercial redevelopment that meets the redevelopment goals of the TAD, and it's at least 7.5 million. If you have at least 5,000 square feet of commercial space, you're eligible for the TAD grant to support that development. And we also have affordable commercial rent requirements. As we'll put a restriction, and for 15 years, they must reduce rents on 20% of their leasable space to 80% of the market going rate for that type of a commercial space. So the Resurgence Fund is very similar. It's geared towards smaller and mid-sized projects, and smaller developers take advantage of this. It can go up to 40% of the total development cost, again, as long as those are all eligible costs. Projects just need a minimum of $100,000 project costs and less than 7.5. So once you get 7.5, you're up in the next bracket. And the maximum funding available is $750,000 for any project in this category. And then similar housing production or commercial affordable rent production in those projects. Next slide. Also in our downtown, the East Side and West Side TADs, we have a facade improvement grant. So this is focusing on commercial revitalization and commercial corridor revitalization, but also targeting small businesses and business owners to improve the facades of their commercial spaces in these 2 TADs. So it's a 1/3, 2/3 grant up to $200,000. So it means the facade improvement fund will give up to $200,000 as long as the business owner is then also spending $100,000. And this is on the exterior improvements to buildings that are less than 80,000 square feet. So kind of targeting in on some of those smaller, oftentimes long-time business locations who could use improvements to their facility to improve their business functions and improve the success of their business, but also improving the district by getting the facade improvements done. Then as we get outside of the East Side and West Side TADs and Perry Bolton, and all of the other TADs, we have pay-as-you-go financing. The 3 TADs established in 2006, we call them corridor TADs because rather than being kind of a block of a district, they kind of narrowly follow a particular corridor in the city that really needed redevelopment attention. So the TADs were formed along those corridors. It's Campbellton Road, ML King Hollowell, Metropolitan Avenue, and then the Stadium TAD. Stadium itself is not a corridor, but it follows the corridors right adjacent to the stadium. So in those, being formed in 2006, right before the Great Recession, the tax base dipped after they were formed. And so it's taken a very long time, and only recently did we get to the point where the dark blue line started to grow in those TADs above that base amount that was established? It keeps going to APS, the county and the city. So we developed pay-as-you-go financing, which is based on the increase in the taxable value of the property once you do your development. Similar requirements, affordable housing or affordable commercial. You're then able to draw down the incentive award based on that improvement, because we know that you're going to generate the increment that in order for us to be able to provide it to the developer. And we also have a small version of the facade improvement grant in those TADs, a small business improvement grant, up to $20,000 with a smaller match from small businesses in those TADs. And they can use them also for interior improvements. Doesn't just have to be on the exterior. We also have a community empowerment fund, which is for development of properties for nonprofits and nonprofit activities that serve the community. So the TADs were able to be flexible on the uses. It doesn't just have to be affordable housing. We are able to provide funds for these other types of developments based on community needs and the redevelopment goals of those the communities inside each TAD. So as Vicki said, we do extensive underwriting of the projects. They have to demonstrate the financing that they have from traditional or other sources, and they have to demonstrate they're not able to get additional financing for whatever reason. We look in detail at their pro formas so that we really can establish that there is a gap that's not able to be filled otherwise. That makes them eligible for the TAD. And then of course, we have them meet the things outlined in each of these programs. So I think that's questions. Do I have another slide, Michelle? Nope, on to questions. The last thing I'll state is that the funds generated within one TAD must be used within that TAD. They do not move around or go elsewhere. All right, so Leah, you want to do the calling on folks?
Absolutely. We have Carla Causey. And before Carla speaks, I will remind you all once again, please make sure that your questions are relevant to course content. Specifically, make sure that your questions are relevant to the TAD as the tax allocation district, or the TAD, as Ashley has just instructed. So your questions should cover what, or should be related to what was covered in this previous segment. All right, and then I'm also seeing a question from Mr. Jones, who was unable to speak, but I'll go ahead and start with Ms. Causey.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I have a question about the facade improvement fund, just to make sure I understood what you had said here. And what it sounded to my ear was that you actually go after those businesses to let them know those funds are available. So my first one is, can a community apply for those type of funds, specifically for the facade improvement fund, to be able to use it within its business corridor, like some of the smaller neighborhood commercial corridors? There may be lots of different businesses and the facades are somewhat dated, late 1800s, early 1900s, that sort of thing. But to improve that entire facade, is that something that the community can apply for directly in order to help its district? And then if so, how is it administered? Is it administered through the community association or something? Or does it need to go directly to the proprietor or the owner of those parcels?
It needs to go directly to the owner of the property, and the owner of the property has to be the applicant. But that said, we do work with, especially when each of these programs were first formed, we did lots of sort of informational, outreach to let businesses know through mailers, but also work with the neighborhood, like often the business associations, but presentations to the NPUs. But like as we go through time, new people come in and people don't always know about them. So if you have such an area, a commercial district in your community that is within one of the TADs, or if you don't know if it's one of the TADs, you'll have my email address. Also, you can reach out to me and I can direct you to the right spot on our website. It's go ahead and reach out to me. You can absolutely go to the website into our TAD section and look for it, but I can really direct you and I can map it for you to make sure, you know, we understand which TAD you're in, and then therefore, you know, what is possible. And we can attend meetings with you, and even join you on walking the street and going and meeting with the businesses to tell them about it. We meet with the businesses. I think if the business is a renter and not an owner, you know, we could like kind of tailor our approach, because you got to get to the owner of the property. That's the
I
trick.
can give,
And
yeah, I
sometimes
can
that's
give
hard.
owners. What's the window for the applications? Is there a particular window that they need to apply within?
No, it's always open. I mean, if, you know, it's open until funds are allocated, and at the moment they're open.
And last question, it said up to $200,000. Is that per award?
Mhm.
Okay. And what's the contact
It's
information?
Ms.
Is it in the
Cosby,
chat?
it's your last question on this subject, okay? Last
Oh, no,
question.
she said she would give the contact information. Where is it?
We're gonna drop it in the chat. We said that at the beginning of the class.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Mr. Martin.
Yes, you indicated that applicants for TAD funding had to demonstrate that they weren't able to secure funding by other means. And I was curious as to how they would demonstrate such a thing. And I was also curious as to how that would relate to the West Highlands project that was funded through the Perry Bolton TAD and proceeded at risk while the legal challenge was pending on that TAD, and therefore obviously could receive all the funding it needed from other sources.
I'm not able to speak to the West Highlands. I don't know the details of that project. That predates me by a fair amount of time, I think, and Invest Atlanta. If you want to email me, I could try to get the info for you. That's also the redevelopment of an Atlanta housing property. So that might have something to do with it. It's not just a private developer financing a project. But your first question on how they demonstrate that, we get their letters from their banks. We will ask for you know, it states the maximum amount that they're able to fund the project for, and we go extensively through their pro formas, which shows their, you know, not to get too far into the weeds, but the debt coverage ratio generated by the operating income, which is what banks use to set the amount of lending that they will do on a project. And so, you know, we spend a lot of time in these spreadsheets. It's one of my favorite parts of the job, right, Vicki? I like those spreadsheets. Vicki makes fun of me, but that's how we do it. You know, I mean, that's how we do it. And you know, we get as much information as we can, and we look at their numbers, and if they're not, and when we can tell in their numbers like what they're doing, and then we verify those numbers, those costs, if it's part of their costs for their cash flow over time, we verify those as best we can. Project's not built yet. Interest rates do change, you know, I mean, at the moment they're going up, so everything does get harder at the moment.
So
in a fluctuating environment, we do our very best, and we do a very good job, of course, Jim, but you know, it is, of course.
So it's ultimately
Hold on. We're not going to get into a long discussion about.
So it's ultimately based on the developer's pro forma then, is that right?
Yeah, we use theirs, and then we have one that we ask them to complete. So we get a consistent information from there, and then the backup information for it.
Okay, thank you. And I do
Thanks,
want to
Kim.
point out, if we have time at the end, we can take these types of questions. I just want to make sure that they have time to get through the material.
You got to keep us on track, because you know,
I
we're like
want to.
technicians, and I'll answer all the stuff. So you just.
I want to make sure y'all can cover the material, and I want to make sure that everybody who has questions on the material gets to get those answered too. All right, Miss Tanya Williams, and then Miss Angeline Santibashi, maybe.
Yes, I had, I think, a pretty easy one. How much money remains in the West Side TAD, and does the TAD end when all of the funds are allocated, or is there a hard stop date?
The TADs end. So if there were bonds, I'll try to make this quick. If there were bonds issued as part of the development of the TAD, then they'll go until the bonds are paid off, which is typically 25 years. Sometimes those bonds are refinanced and adjusted if the goals of the TAD are. So the West Side TAD, it was renewed and expanded in '98 after being established in '92. So, you know, the city of Atlanta is able to do these things, you know, through a process as it deems fit. And the West Side TAD, I think there's about Currently, there's about 10 million of unallocated, undesignated funds available for projects. I can look and tell you more specifically, but they're always generating additional tax increment. So their money will never, I'm gonna say money will, I'll never say never. They will always generate additional income. So it's about paying off the bonds and being satisfied that the redevelopment goals have been achieved. And then at that time, the city of Atlanta, so not Invest Atlanta per se, this goes through a process to then end the TAD.
All right,
Thank you
so much, Angeline, and then Miss Priscilla.
Hey, I have a hypothetical question about if a small business receives a grant for the facade improvement from the facade improvement fund, is there anything in place that would, I guess, kind of ensure that they don't make improvements to the property and then flip the property, I guess, the next year, maybe sell it to a big developer who then bulldozes everything? Y'all have anything that kind of ensures that, or does that ever happen?
I can't think of it ever happening. So when we do the small business grants, you're awarded the grant and then you draw it down as you do the improvements. And you elucidate the improvements, which are real specific about what you can and can't do, and it's physical improvements to the building. So that if your business moves elsewhere, or it happens but is not successful, it's a physical improvement to the property, and then that's an improved property that another business can come into. And looks better in the neighborhood. It reduces blight, all those goals of the TAD. Typically, someone doesn't go through the effort of that kind of a renovation project to immediately flip it for demolition. They may then sell it, and if it's a property owner, that's their prerogative. As a property owner, when it's a business who owns their property and that's their goal, and I think that that's an important wealth. We view that as an important wealth building opportunity for that business, which is an Atlanta business. Property owners could be Atlanta residents also, and if they make that kind of a gain, that's great. Oftentimes they're people from elsewhere, but nevertheless, that physical improvement remains with the building and benefits the community.
All right, Miss Priscilla.
You're on mute, Miss Priscilla.
Your microphone is muted. You'll have to unmute yourself.
That I had unmuted it. But I want to know, is there any home improvement grants for people living in the community, and also assistance with, say, the taxes are really high right now? And do you offer assistance for seniors in the community?
We do have programs. Some of them are partial, kind of have funds from the TAD on the West Side neighborhoods. But our single family group are the ones to present on that. We do have, and Vicki, you might really want to talk about our owner occupied rehab program, which is for largely seniors. You don't have to be a senior. There's some other qualifications, but it does target seniors who've been in their house for a good number of years, who have needed repairs for just good function, just for proper function and safety of the home. You want to speak briefly on the other ones, Vicki?
Well, I was just going to talk about, I don't know about the tax relief, but I can speak on the owner occupied rehab. There was funding, and again, like everything else, we were oversubscribed, but with the new bond issue that was issued, the 2021 bond issue, we are looking to probably open that program back up, maybe later on this fall. We'll go to communities and have those meetings so everybody understands, what they need to do to kind of get those funds. And but right now, all of the funds that we had before are all accounted for, but we do have the ability, and we're going to open that program up. So be on the lookout. We'll do kind of little events at different locations. And Michelle, I think the last time we did about 4 or 5, I think. Michelle is on the phone, and to promote the program and to get clarity for seniors, and maybe do a few pre-apps at that time.
Yes. Oh, I was just going to say, yes, that's true. We'll probably be looking at another 4 events coming up with the community outreach. We typically have them, or have in the past, and look forward to having them again at community centers around the city, recreation centers, as well as Atlanta Technical, Technical College. But of course, make sure you check out our website and you subscribe to our newsletter so that you can be made aware of that opening.
Thank you. And I do want to point out that Invest Atlanta covers that particular question in the intro class. And I think so, right? Isn't that in the intro class? Yes. Okay. And we have a couple of those videos on our YouTube page if you want to take a look at those classes. All right. Any other questions on the tax allocation districts? All right. So was that the end? Where did she go? Ashley, Vicky, Michelle? Okay, awesome. So with that in mind, I'm going to circle back to Mr. Ross's question because I promised him that I would. His question was, what is a community's recourse when developers promise services and amenities agreed for an MPU support and when they are no longer being provided 3 to 5 years down the road? So the developer will say, if you support our project, we'll do X, Y, and Z, we'll do this and we'll do that. And then you all, issue the funds for the project, and then down the line, the developer doesn't come through. The question is, what is the community's recourse? Sorry.
Well, Mr. Ross, and I'll speak, and Ashley could probably chime in too, but we hope that our developers don't do that to you all, that they do adhere to those, those guidelines. But again, when we get a letter, we're going to look at it and understand what the conditions are. But we make sure that they do everything that we require them to do. And if you guys, I'm not sure if you've entered into, if they're working with you guys, with the community, and we do understand that developers do community benefits agreements sometimes, or whatever the document is that they're going to do. But for us, because it's not really with us, it's with the community. So Ashley, do you have anything else to add to kind of add on that?
Right, the community benefits agreement is a difficult one to enforce, and there are ways that the community, and I might need someone from the city to chime in if they know this, but this is something we could look into. Just from my own experience in PUD, which Jim Martin and I have known each other for a long time, and just in my neighborhood, and other people who've done these CBAs, when you are able to legally register it with the city, and I'm not using the right word, there is a possibility to work with the city on enforcement, but only some things. It has to be part of the legal jurisdiction of the city, zoning, for example, land use, required infrastructure and stuff like that. So it can be legally hard for them to be enforced by the city, but it's not. There's no jurisdiction over those items often for Invest Atlanta at all. So typically the city is your best recourse on enforcing them, but it has to do with the way the CBA is constructed, and then you have to work with your contact at the city on that kind of formalization process. And again, it's only for things over which the city has jurisdiction. So for us, that's affordability and time. And we put a LURA, a land use restriction agreement, is registered with who do we register it with, Vicki?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Like when you register your deed, right? It's registered with your deed.
Oh yeah, it's recorded. Yes, it's a recorded
the deed of the property, so that if it ever changes hands, or if they don't do it, we do our compliance on the things that we're able to require. They have to demonstrate every year that they're meeting those things. We have a whole compliance team. And then legally we're able to enforce it because we've registered that LURA at closing before they receive funds.
All right, thank you so much, Tanya.
I apologize. I forgot my question.
It happens. You're getting old, girl. I'm kidding. All right, does anyone else have any questions on the financing tools that were shared with us tonight from Invest Atlanta? Any other questions on those financing tools?
Mr. Bradley.
Bradley.
Hi, my apologies. My camera isn't working right now. So my question, because I heard earlier, I believe Ashley mentioned that you all have a set of underwriting tools that you use to kind of go over the deal structure, maybe like the pro forma of the developer who's submitting the application. So my question is for developers that are kind of new to the affordable housing, have probably done maybe small scale affordable housing and maybe done commercial, and we're moving over into more of the LIHTC and all the different tax credit deals. Do you have any either courses or any tools that can help us build out our pro formas and adjust it to?
We can't give you our information because you're going to do your deal to what our underwriting criteria is. Come on. That was a good one though, Ms. Bradley. But really what I would recommend, I like to talk to developers. So if you're interested in doing development, kind of talk to you, go through the steps. And if we can give you maybe a suggestion of a 3 or 4, maybe consultants or somebody that you can reach out to help you, we're willing to do that. We can't just say, oh, go to this person, but we can give you an option to go to someone who may be able to help you, because LIHTC deals and those applications can really, they're large, right? And it's a lot of information. You need to know what the QAP says. So there's a lot of things that go into that. And I'm willing to kind of help you kind of get to somebody if you ever have questions. And then just give me a call and we can talk through whatever it is you're trying to do and see how I can help you. But as far as like, and I know at one time Enterprise had something on their website but it was more for smaller development versus the larger. I don't know if they still have that tool out there. I would definitely like, maybe if you could, and Leah, y'all gonna put our information in the chat? Because
Yes,
and then just give me a call and let's see what we could talk about. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Everyone, their information is going to be on the evaluation email that you're going to receive immediately following this class.
Oh, okay.
Even better.
Just
Thank you.
don't let it be.
No, you know what? Wait, let me step it up a notch. You only get the contact information if you submit the survey. How about that?
VRoberts@investatlanta.com.
I'm just kidding.
She's measuring her outcomes. She's driving toward you. That's good.
I'm kidding. I'm trying to bribe you into completing the survey so we can make sure we get funding to continue this program in the next fiscal year.
Did you get that, Ms. Bradley?
I'll add on to that.
When you say it one more time, that would be great.
VRoberts@investatlanta.com.
Got it. Thank you.
So we do have like a fillable, we also require people complete our pro forma document, a template, and that's kind of also helps folks out who might be on that lower end of the size and the scale to give you a tool there. But also call Vicki, call me, or email us, and then we get you the phone number. Because there are groups that like Incremental Development Alliance. Is it Alliance? I don't know if it's Incremental Development in Atlanta is a group that gets together with smaller developers who are growing in this space. And so we can connect you with some of those organizations that are outside of Invest Atlanta that are really operating in that space. Because we pick up when you're a little bit larger, especially the tax exempt bond financing. You need to have worked with a LIHTC developer before you yourself are considered eligible to apply, on your own for financing. That's those federal requirements, but those opportunities help you network and connect with different developers, kind of moving along that spectrum. We do want to support like local people growing their development opportunities and redeveloping their own communities. We see a lot of that, and we speak with people all the time about it, and we really like those conversations.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Williams, you remember your question?
I did. Thank you. So at the beginning earlier, when you said about the community letters of recommendations with condition, would you be able to give an example of conditions? Do those differ from the enforceable city conditions? Are those two separate things, or is that one sort of in the same?
We don't usually get conditions
Yeah, I
to like
haven't-
an NPU to Invest Atlanta funding. Am I right on that, Vicky?
Yeah, I mean, they may say it might be more like denials and why they denied it. I haven't really seen any come with conditions, you know. But we would look at the conditions, and if it's something that's relative to, like, the condition to me isn't that you say, we want you to supply our, community with blah, blah, blah. Like, that wouldn't be a condition, but it may be that you put lights or street lights. So we're gonna add,
That's what I was
those
thinking.
kind of things, but I haven't seen any either. We've had a lot of, maybe not a lot, but a couple of denials that we have to look at to see. It can't be a denial. We don't want affordable housing in our community. Like, that doesn't, that's not a denial to me.
Wow. Okay, and I had one more question. You said QAP. What does that stand for?
That is the shucks. If you wouldn't ask me, I could have told you. The QAP is what the Qualified Action Plan that is done by the state of Georgia. And there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of meetings, a lot of things that they go to, and people, they put it out there, then they give you a comment period, then there's a session. So it's just everything, and it outlines what their requirements are when you're doing a LIHTC deal, a low income housing tax credit deal. Whether it's a 9%, and they say, if you're doing 9%, these are the things you need to do and what we look for. If you're doing 4%, these are the things you need, this is what we look for. It tells you everything, because they do a scoring. DCA does scoring on their applications. And so you get points for the things that you do and the things that you can do, and so that's what the Qualified Action Plan.
Thank you.
And if you want to learn more about that, you can, shoot me an email. I'll shoot you their login, so you can connect to DCA and get kind of information.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angeline. And then Carla.
Hey, my question is about, I guess, does Invest Atlanta, I see the TADs, tax allocation districts, but also is there anything, I guess, any money set aside for the city's SPIs, so the special public interest areas that they have? Do y'all, I don't even know if I'm verbalizing my question correctly, but I guess, is there overlap in that?
The SPI is a zoning category, right? For the special public interest areas that need sort of like very nuanced zoning. So I do apologize. I just told my son that he let my dog out because he's barking at a car in the street. So you can reword your question, because I didn't hear the beginning. I'm really sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. I think you might have indirectly answered it, actually. So I see where Invest Atlanta has money allocated for the TADs. But I guess, is there overlap within the SPIs as well?
Yeah, so exactly. There could be SPI. There are SPI districts, zoning districts in some of our TADs, and that's TADs are agnostic to that per se. I mean, if you're doing a development, housing or commercial, you need to follow the city's zoning requirements, building permit, and building code. So, but the city governs that. And so we get documentation of your permits and everything, like from a developer before you're funded, so that we know that you're going through that with the city. But the city really makes sure that you're meeting your zoning. You would go through or if you needed to rezone, you would do that with the city, and then provide documentation to Invest Atlanta. Like, that's part of our due diligence process, but we don't necessarily have anything that's zoning specific.
So is Invest Atlanta a nonprofit then?
We're a government organization. So exactly how that's status in our Secretary of State, I don't know. But we're a governmental agency.
Yeah, we're quasi-government. So some funding comes from the government and other funds come from somewhere else. But also to that, we do have a nonprofit entity.
That's right.
That's most recent. That's current. Yeah, that's new.
Is it also?
And if I could say the QAP is a qualified allocation plan, I think I missed that by a whole lot right there.
You did. That ain't what you said the first time, Vicki.
It is, I said action
Listen,
plan. I was
that's
like,
why we keep telling y'all to stop using these acronyms that nobody knows.
I apologize.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
so I got it. So yeah.
Carla, you've got a question? And then we're gonna wrap up.
Actually, she answered my question too. I think we had the same one.
Wonderful.
It was about overlap with the types of funding that was in place.
Okay, awesome.
So she answered it. Thank you.
Awesome. My pleasure. Thank you so much. As always, it's really good to see some of your familiar faces. Samantha got on me about shouting people out, so I stopped doing it, but
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, I feel like I've met a lot of people through these NPU universities, so I really appreciate them. I see a lot of familiar faces. Mr. Martin always makes us think hard, so I appreciate all of that. And we welcome that, Miss Storm, we've talked on several, a couple of times we've talked, and so I appreciate it. And, I can say for myself, I'm always here. I may not have all the answers, but I'll try to find them and get them for you. So anytime, you want to email me for anything, please do so.
All right. Well, I thank you all for being here. Samantha, I know you've got an announcement or two before we close out on some upcoming classes we have. And Samantha's going to ask you to complete the course evaluation. It really takes just a few seconds, and it's really important to us monitoring our progress with these classes, our success with these classes, and knowing what we need to improve to make it even better for you. But most importantly, it is tied to our funding. And we're coming up on budget season for a new fiscal year. So please, please, please make sure you complete these surveys so that we can rely on that to tell our story and explain to the powers that be why we need funding to continue NPU University. Go ahead, Sam. Sam?
Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself. The screen was doing the thing anyway. It's a little sluggish. Thank you all for participating tonight in NPU University. Our upcoming courses for next month are as follows, and we have a really busy month of May. Our first in-person course will be for those ages 55 and up, our seniors, and it's our Civic Participation for Seniors course, which is May 10th, and it's going to be here at Atlanta City Hall in the atrium from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And then we have the next day, literally, we're going to be back with Invest Atlanta talking about density matters and neighborhood revitalization. That is going to be on a Thursday, May 11th at 6 p.m. That Saturday, we will have Urban Plan Academy for Community Leaders, which is an in-person class from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Then the following week, we will have a mobile workshop entitled Home Sweet Home. We're partnering with our Office of Housing. That course is May 24th. It's only 25 slots. So if you plan on participating or would like to register, please go online and do so. That course is from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then in June, we have our bylaws clinic, which is June 8th at 6 p.m. And then we kick off our Code of Enforcement Academy, which is online, which is June 10th through August 5th, bi-weekly from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturdays. And you must commit to participate for all 5 sessions. To register or for more information, please visit www.npuatlanta.org. And if you want to know anything, all things Neighborhood Planning Unit, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at NPU Atlanta, and also get updates from us from next door at City of Atlanta Neighborhood Planning Units. And if we don't have anything else to discuss, Leah has something. She always has.
I do have one thing that I want to say, because I don't want people to miss out just because they didn't know. The Urban Plan Academy has 25 slots only. I think Samantha already said that part, but what I didn't hear is that the Civic Participation for Seniors class has only 100 slots. That's not a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot. And we make sure that the folks that attend our classes get the word first, but once it is opened up, it's going to fill up very quickly. So if you are a senior in the city of Atlanta and you're interested in coming to that civic participation for seniors, it's in person. It's going to be a really, really great event. Plus Samantha is serving you lunch. So it's going to be a really good event. If you want to register for that, please do not wait. Like, please register for that so we can make sure you get a seat.
And three
Is there
of our class
registration at, Leland?
participants are, three of our class participants from tonight are actually on our panel. So I'm excited.
Oh, awesome. That's even better. 3 of our participants are on the panel. That's great. All right. Miss Tanya, is your hand still up or you have another question?
I just put it up one more time. I just had a quick question. So are the meetings, are you still staying with, going to remain with the online, the Zoom format? And it's just some of the meetings are going back to in person?
So you mean NPU University?
Yes.
Some of our classes are in person and some of them are virtual.
Okay.
Yeah, it just depends on the class.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. And Ms. Sagira, Samantha sent me the list of all the Urban Plan Academy folks before my vacation. I'm just getting to it today, my first day back from vacation. So we'll get notification out to you. When, Sam? Is it just whenever I get it to you or?
Yep.
Okay, so soon, very soon. All right. Thank you all. I don't see any other hands or questions. So I'm going to bid you all a good night with great thanks to my colleagues over at Invest Atlanta. Thank you so much, Vicki. Thank you so much, Ashley. And thank you so much, Michelle. And I saw Yolanda trying to stay in the background somewhere, but hey, Yolanda, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate all of you so much. And thanks, Samantha, for another great class. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
And Tony, thank you.
Survey.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Yeah, survey people, survey.
Survey.